Dying, the key to living. I once accepted a coach training opportunity in Mexico. The training and the group were excellent. However, I had to admit to myself that I had a second hidden motive for attending. That was to witness what is thought to be one of the greatest spectacles on earth, the migration of the monarch butterfly. It is thought that this butterfly migrates some 3,000 miles, ultimately making home for a period in a handful of trees in the mountains of Mexico. The thought of witnessing, quite literally, tens of thousands of butterflies resting and then awakening has been a lifelong wish. The climb to these trees is no mean feat, several hours with a guide, continually moving onward and rising upward. When we eventually arrived at this auspicious place, I was deeply moved and awestruck, bearing witness to the presence of a vast myriad of butterflies packed side by side and wing to wing in these few trees, resting together. And then a short while later, as the morning sun slowly rose, it was as if the trees themselves took flight. Thousands upon thousands of butterflies took to the air. It was quite literally breathtaking. However, whereas those around me were looking upward in awe, I found myself looking downward. For what drew my attention, gently falling and then lying on the forest floor, were butterflies' wings. Despite the wondrous spectacle of life and its awakening, my eye was drawn more towards dying and death. The following morning, when I reached the same spot once again, I captured this moment on film. A single wing, carrying a teardrop of morning dew, resting upon the forest floor, the apparent finality of death was contrasted by the appearance of green shoots within the same frame. In working with this image, I chose to add an overlay of gold. For what I saw was not just finality and ending, but more sensed a golden thread, a continuity between ending and beginning. As a photographer, I have realized many times that I discover something more about myself in the photographs that I take. You may have experienced the same, wondering why you are drawn towards particular images or works of art, and how they may, in some way, reveal yourself to you or tell of your story. I am not unlike many in the Western world who have sought to turn away from death. What we most fear, we often turn away from and even deny its existence. However, consider this conundrum. What if my developmental potential hides in what I most reject, and there awaits my discovery. How different would our lives be if we were able to turn towards what we automatically turn away from? As highlighted in an earlier podcast, hide and seek may be the game of development. What if what we most seek is hidden in the last place that we think to look? And what does it mean to face into rather than turn away from dying and death, or other things that we most fear? For me, dying is high on my list. Consider firstly the consequence of not. If we are not able or willing to face our fears, then what? Well, what we fear, we judge and reject, if not ultimately deny, and such aspects of ourselves judge to be unwanted or rationally pushed away to the edge of our existence and beyond, towards the unconscious. Our rational logic thinks this is a sure way of ridding ourselves of what we don't want. But is the unconscious a psychological dustbin? What if what we deny, rather than disappearing, unconsciously controls our life? For what else might drive our compulsive reactions? For example, a fear of dying may prevent risk-taking in all its forms, through our unwillingness to enter into the unknown, keeping ourselves on the straight and narrow path of life determined by what we should, must, and ought do. But might we then ask the question, in fearing dying, are we really living? So what if we are able to turn towards what we most fear, giving attention to dying and even the contemplation of our own death? Now, this reflection is a choice, so please take your own time and place trust in your own journey and pace, deciding for yourself if and how you may wish to engage with this contemplative process. My intent is not to force anything, more to illustrate and share from my own experience, that when I have chosen to face into what I most feared, then death somehow became less the brick wall and final ending that I feared, and more a bridge that pointed towards the secret to living the life that I had longed to live. The gold in all my images of death and dying is a metaphor, pointing towards how being may be the constancy in death as well as life. Might there possibly be a deathless principle, a bridge, a continuity, a golden thread? When I have contemplated dying and death, I realize the immense value that resides in the present moment. The reality of death appears to make the actuality of life more precious, more immediate. And in fearing death, I am only able to live my life in part. If so, could consciously facing death be the only vital key that unlocks the secret to living life? Life might then become more spontaneous and less predictable, more courageous, less fearful, more responsive, less reactive, more vital, less mundane, more precious, less taken for granted. Together, these revelations collectively create the prospect for creativity, whereby we are able to more fully enter into the wonder and vital mystery of not knowing. And when there is no fear of falling, might we learn for what we truly stand? This next image gifted that very thought. A falling leaf being taken by the undercurrents, but as it goes deeper into the darkness, it seems to grow clearer, lighter, and brighter. It reminds me of a saying by the poet Rumi, "Let darkness be your candle." Might the consciousness of dying gift our reason for being? The prospect may then arise that all that I may have feared could potentially be faced, turning towards rather than away. And then, vulnerability, the name our rational mind gives to our shadow and the darker aspects of who we are, that we may think or judge to be weak or bad, revealing our flaws, limitations, and imperfections, when faced and given its own airtime, invited back into conscious existence, then what? Would the acceptance and normalizing of vulnerability transform our lives? There may be nothing to reject, only to experience. The replacement of judging and rejecting with including and embracing may foster a remarkable developmental opportunity. For in embracing what we reject, we may not only integrate, but also go beyond to open to something more. This is the nature of transcendence, and in developmental terms, there is no way around, only through. Judging only creates division, while including and embracing and ultimately transcending is how we remember and rediscover our wholeness. And as we are made whole, so we can increasingly experience what it means to be at one with ourselves and the world around us. Being at one with may describe the essence of relationship, and in my own mind defines our capacity to love. It may mark the greatest extent to which we are able to relate to ourselves, others, and the whole of nature, and may even mark the extent of our evolution.